So welcome everybody. For those of you who haven't already heard me introduce myself because you're listening to the recording, my name's Claire Squires and I'm the Director of SGSAH, the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities. And thank you very much for joining us today or listening subsequently to this session about the British Council Scotland and SGSAH Earth Scholarships, a programme that we're really, really excited to be running for the third year. First of all, I'm just going to quickly go through what we're going to be talking about specifically today. The session is going to last, I think, around an hour. So first of all, a bit of a welcome from myself and Harish Lokan, who's Head of Education at the British Council and who I'll hand over to in just a second. I'm going to do an overview and an introduction to the programme, and then I will hand over to two colleagues who are leads of our clusters, which are UHI, Edinburgh, Edinburgh Napier and Strathclyde. I'm going to be talking about the Edinburgh and Edinburgh Napier cluster, and we'll explain what the cluster structure is in just a moment. Then I'm really, really pleased to say that we have one of last year's Earth Scholars, Sydney Mohangi, who's going to be telling you about his experience. When I say last year, it's just this year actually, but the 2024 programme. So he's going to be telling you about his experience of being an Earth Scholar from the application process through to today, I think. And then finally, Hannah Boast from the University of Edinburgh, who was this year mentor at the University of Edinburgh for one of the incoming scholars. So she's just going to talk a little bit from her perspective. And then we'll end, for those of you who are online today, with a Q&A. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Harish, I think. Yeah, over to you, and just let me know when you want me to forward the slides.
Thanks very much, Claire, and thanks everyone. It's great to be part here today. Thanks to Claire and the team and Monica as well to be part of this year's launch of the 24-25, I guess, Earth Scholarships launch as part of it, and great to see so many interested participants as well as we look to launch the programme today. What initially started out, as Claire mentioned, this is a partnership between the British Council of Scotland and the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities. What initially started out as a one-year pilot programme, now almost 3 years ago, as a result actually of COP26 that was held in Glasgow, which we'll touch on in a minute, has really developed into a really established scheme of kind of bringing interdisciplinary practitioners and the role of STEM and climate together, and that crossover between education and arts as a key outcome from COP26 that was held in Glasgow has really now become an established scheme as we enter the third year. So absolutely delighted to be here as part of this, and the British Council of Scotland continues obviously to be active in the climate work as well, and we'll touch on that in a minute, but it's great to be part of this, and of course the clusters as well, to see the great work that's been established over the first few years, and as we now go into the third year, what more can be done in this space that continues to be prevalent as well. It was also testament obviously last year to the interest and quality of applications that were received in terms of the scholars that we've got from this year's cohort, but again hope to generate more interest as we go into year 3. If we go on to the next slide, Claire, thank you very much. Just for those of you who don't know about the British Council, we are the UK's international cultural relations organisation. Keyword there is on trust, as it says in this slide, and it's about building trust and understanding, making people-to-people connections between the UK and the rest of the world. We'll see that on the next slide. That is also illustrated through our global network of over 107 different offices across the globe as well. So it's making those people-to-people connections between us here in the UK and the rest of the world. If we go on to the next slide, please, Claire, that would be much appreciated. Yeah, again, cultural relations, as I said, we're the largest organisation representing cultural relations around the world. That pretty much, for those who aren't aware, really looks at the interventions that develop intercultural dialogue, mutual benefits around security, stability, peace and prosperity as well. And again, our network of over 100 offices around the globe is able to do just that. If we look on the next slide, please. So our vision and purpose, as I mentioned, both make delivery of being a proper, prosperous world built on trust, but also peace. And that's through building those people-to-people connections and that trust I mentioned between us and the rest of the world as well. On the next slide, if we move on to that. Yeah, and this slide just really illustrates, as I've mentioned, where we work and how we work. Again, We do it through arts and culture, education and English, and the partnership that we've had with the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities over the last 3 years has really delivered on that, particularly that crossover between education, arts and culture. It's really built that trust with the Scottish Graduate School of Arts and Humanities as a trusted partner alongside the universities in Scotland that are part of the graduate school as well. And again, why we do it, again, it's about international partnerships, improving networks, developing knowledge and understanding, working with young people, educators and creatives to transform lives and shape a better world in partnership. And this scheme pretty much has helped to do that over the last 3 years. So it's a testament, obviously, to the work of the clusters and obviously to the team at the Scottish Graduate School, to the scholars that have come through to see the work that's been achieved as well. If we move on to the next slide, please, Claire. Just to touch on the Earth Scholarships as well itself, again, as I mentioned, this is the 3rd year of funding provided by us, the British Council Scotland, in partnership with the graduate school. And it's now nice to see that a series of cohort of scholars have now been developed. There's that mentorship kind of approach that's being seen from previous scholars to new scholars coming through. It's really been able to demonstrate the vital role that arts and culture has played in addressing the climate emergency and climate change from a different angle, which was very much a key outcome from COP26 that was held in Glasgow. And again, it builds on the legacy, for those of you who aren't aware, of the British Council's Climate Connection programme, recognising the climate emergency. And we should say that we're not climate specialists, but we're very much aware of the climate effect it's having on our partners around the globe on a day-to-day basis. We see it across interdisciplinary research in science, arts and humanities. And I think the unique thing about this programme, it's that interdisciplinary mix that has been able to brought over in the arts and education space from diverse disciplines, so that interdisciplinary learning, but also that cross-cultural expertise that is being shared through the Scholars Network. It's been pretty impressive to see the projects that have been completed. I've touched some of the themes that have been touched on already, but around kind of eco-archaeology, governance, performance art, climate justice, social movements, really shows you the breadth of work that comes through to addressing this agenda as well. And then just on the next slide as well, please, just to touch on our work on climate more broadly. I mentioned how this all started and initiated was through COP26 in Glasgow through our Climate Connections programme. Again, that was a network of individuals that delivered solutions to the climate network that led to the delivery of the Earth Scholarships. And then again, through inception, found the Scottish Graduate School of Arts and Humanities and this partnership a perfect fit to where we are now. And again, the fact that every university in Scotland is involved is a testament to kind of the work and commitment to the sustainability agenda as well. It's also key to demonstrate the power and advantage of the cluster model that features within the scholarships, but also that industry engagement aspect as well from it. Again, so that's been a key aspect in kind of our output on climate as well, but also just to touch on some other areas where we're working on climate across the broader education piece for the British Council's work on education in Scotland. We very much do that through our schools work as well. One of our key partners based here in Edinburgh is Learning for Sustainability Scotland, which is under the University of Edinburgh. That's been very much demonstrating the impact of young people as global citizens and what they can do to address the climate agenda. At the beginning of this calendar year, we ran a climate simulation event with a number of secondary schools and primary and secondary schools across Scotland held here in Edinburgh to look at kind of tackling the climate agenda, and that's been really successful. We currently work with our Schools Connect team on international school partnerships, which have a climate focus, and these will continue next calendar year to deliver kind of the climate partnerships and get 2 schools, primary and secondary schools, to look at models of ways to address the climate agenda as well. And again, coming back to COP as well, our climate colleagues are heavily active, of course, in this year's COP, which this year takes place in Azerbaijan. So we're currently working very closely with our colleagues in Azerbaijan and climate colleagues on how we can really demonstrate Scotland's approach as a whole across the higher education and school sector in the climate work that's going on through research, through young people, through the global citizenship agenda, how that can be addressed to the wider COP agenda in Azerbaijan later this year. So those are just a bit of a flavour of our broader work on climate. Again, thank you all very much for joining today. Really excited to hear from Sydney and Hannah later today, particularly as scholars from this year's cohort. It was great to meet them at the welcome earlier this year. And again, I know Claire's going to touch on this in a minute. It's a real testament to the work of these scholars and the breadth of countries they've come from. I think we've got every part of the world covered: New Zealand, France, India, Canada, and it's great to have that flavour that is represented in the scholar cohort for this year, as well as obviously the mix of themes too. So thanks everyone for joining, and really appreciate being here, and yeah, well done to the team at the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities as well. Thank you. Back to you.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to be working with British Council Scotland again this year for the third year to facilitate what is a really, really exciting programme. And I think one of the great things is to see those cohorts developing over the years. And I suppose people who are going to be joining us for the third year will have the real advantage of having 2 years worth of previous people's experiences that we plug into the programme, and potential connections and networks as well. Harish has already given a really good overview of the purpose of the programme. So I won't focus on that too much, perhaps, other than to say how it additionally kind of fits in with SGSAH's objectives as well. I'll explain a bit more in a second. It might be a bit back to front what SGSAH actually is, if you're not that sure about it, certain about it. But to say that over the past few years, we've developed a green graduate strategy and operational plan, which you can see and read on our website, and worked very closely with a variety of different colleagues to develop kind of programming in terms of our training and development delivery, kind of through and beyond COP26, which, as you know, has already been mentioned, was in Glasgow. So really kind of fits in with our kind of strategic purpose as well. The programme also fits with 2 of our strategic themes and priority areas, the environmental humanities and creative industries and economies. And I wanted to add as well, and we'll tease this through with subsequent sessions that we've got prepared as well. I'll let you know about those in a moment. The programme has always had a particular focus on interdisciplinarity, but there'll be a particular thematic focus this year on women in STEAM, inclusive education, green energy, and gender equality. So yes, this is the picture of the people who were incoming scholars this year. You will hear from one of them shortly. And as Harish mentioned, both they and the previous set of scholars really did come from all over the world, and also had a kind of very different set of backgrounds in terms of who they are as themselves, as individuals, but also in terms of, you know, within the environmental arts and humanities, their particular specialisms or approaches or methodologies. So even within themselves, a really kind of interdisciplinary set of scholars. And as I'm sure Sydney will tell you more about, you know, that experience of being in the cohort was a really kind of important part of the programme. So you potentially could be one of these faces next year. Just to say a little bit more about the programme, it really is to promote the role and interventions of the environmental arts and humanities, the arts and the cultural sector in addressing the climate emergency, and capacity for interdisciplinary research within STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. So that kind of that interdisciplinary cross sectoral purpose is very important to this programme. So moving on, just to give you a bit of information about the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities. We were founded in 2014, 10 years ago, so we celebrate our first decade this year. We're always really proud to say we're the world's first national graduate school for arts and humanities. We have 17 HEI, Higher Education Institutes. We tend to say that rather than universities, because although that 17 does include many universities, there's a couple of our members who are technically HEIs rather than universities. So in case you're wondering what that acronym means and why we use it, which includes more than 100 non-academic founding supporters. So we've always worked in partnership with a range of different partners, national, international, local. And our purpose is really to work collaboratively to open up Scotland's resources to enhance doctoral training for our HEI members students, so across 17 universities and HEIs across Scotland. This programme, the Earth Scholarships, is really, really great for us because it actually enables us to use those resources, but to open it out to people around the world as well. So that's really exciting for us. And typically we're providing for about 1,750 doctoral researchers in arts and humanities across Scotland. As I said, 17 HEI members, you can see their logos here. And really, if you're thinking about being an Earth Scholar next year, really worth thinking about these. You're going to hear from my colleagues in a moment talking about the cluster structure, but you can be an incoming scholar to any one of these 17 HEIs. And we encourage you to think through, where might be a good home for you, where you might find a good mentor. We always say as well, from SAGSA's perspective, that our 17 members really make the strength. We're bigger than the sum of our parts. The HEIs are very different. Some of them are centuries long established, will be well known potentially throughout the world. Some are much newer HEIs, smaller in terms of their student body. Some are very much in the central belt, the part of Scotland in the middle, which is kind of very densely populated. We also have campuses in the Highlands and Islands with our universities. And we also have small specialist institutions as well, like the Royal Conservatoire and the Glasgow School of Art, which are part of our membership network and therefore open to you as a potential place where you could come and be placed as an Earth Scholar. So the scholarship programme, just to start to focus a little bit more on it. So what the programme will do in 2025 is bring a cohort of PhD researchers and early career researchers in the environmental arts and humanities in the period during April to July. The scholarships for incoming scholars will be for in-person, although they could have some hybrid pre or post elements to them. Research project placements for up to 3 months. That can be variable depending on, kind of what works for you and for your mentor. Including an in-person 10-day cohort building leadership programme with an equivalent number of Scotland-based PhD researchers, and that will take place at the beginning of the fellowship, so in April and May 2025. And you can see a set of scholars in the photos there. They're actually the previous year's scholars, so our first set at the University of Stirling. So this kind of cohort programme is a really crucial part of the scholarship. And this year it's anticipated that funding will support 7 to 9 researchers in total. It depends a little bit on the funding ask of individuals, but that's the kind of number to give you an indicative sense of how many people will join. And an equivalent number of Scotland-based PhD researchers will join as well. So a little bit about eligibility. It's open via 2 routes. You can either be a current PhD researcher in the arts and humanities registered at any non-UK university, or you can be postdoctoral, so an ECR in the arts and humanities who graduated from any non-UK university. PhD researchers can be at any stage of their PhD, from first year through to whenever the finish year is, and that's obviously different for individuals and different international contexts. For ECRs, postdocs, we take a very tight definition of what ECR would be. So we say that's within 1 year of notification of the award of the PhD. And I know that can always be a bit confusing. Is it the ceremony? Is it when you had a defense or a viva? There's a quite specific explanation and description in the guidelines. So if you are someone who is postdoc, please make sure that you look at that. As I said, it's tight. It's 1 year postdoc. However, we can potentially extend that for up to another year if there's quite particular circumstances, which means that you ask for that. So an example might be that you had a period of maternity leave, for example. So if you're in that position, we do enable that period to be extended. Again, more details in the guidelines about precisely that. And then the other eligibility point is that the proposals must be within the environmental arts and humanities. Although we really strongly encourage proposals that have interdisciplinary approaches, those STEAM approaches that we both talked about before, beyond the arts and humanities. That's really very welcome and encouraged, but they must have a heart which starts with the environmental arts and humanities. So in terms of the research proposal, so what we're looking for in the applications, they can be structured in a number of different ways. And I think this can be quite dependent, again, on what stage you're at in your studies and the sort of thing that you might put together as someone who's really only just starting their PhD to someone who's actually finished their PhD might be really, really different. We have no kind of judgment about what stage you're in. And I think it's the case last year that we had people who were in their first year of their PhD, through to people who were already postdoc or just about finishing. Yeah, we did have people who were postdoc. So, kind of what works for you is up for you to formulate with your mentor and to tell us about. So it could be to further existing work, so which you undertook as your PhD or postdoc. So that might be quite nice if you've completed that big project of your PhD and you're looking to kickstart yourself subsequently. It can be a discrete standalone project, which nonetheless furthers the knowledge base, networks, and expertise that you have. Or it could be as you, as an Earth scholar, joining and furthering an existing project at the host institution where you work with that named academic mentor. And again, we're kind of very open to a range of outcomes and outputs, depending on the nature of the research project, and also kind of where you are again in your trajectory. We might expect someone who's first year to be doing things which are slightly different from someone who's postdoc. So that's very flexible, and kind of all are really very welcomed and have been successful in the past. I've already talked about the importance of the cohort. This is so important, and perhaps even more so than we originally thought when we first devised and set up the program. So there's a comprehensive cohort building training and development program. So pre-placement induction and training events, so you get to know each other a little bit, and the Scotland-based PhD researchers who will be joining you on the cohort program. The cohort program itself, which will take place in April and May, kind of very much delivered in partnership with the HEI clusters, online informal catch-up, which we kind of do throughout the program. We also ask everybody to contribute to a research showcase via presentations on sagsaresearch.com. And then kind of post placement training event, depending on what kind of the scholars want to do and what's kind of the thing that's most useful for them. I know there's some really interesting plans underfoot with this year's scholars thinking around publication possibilities. So depending on what the cohort feels would be most worthwhile for them to do, we're more than happy to support. So this year, for example, we facilitated this year's scholars to meet together at our summer school in Glasgow in June to kind of further some of their plans and ideas. So I'm going to turn now to thinking a little bit more about the clusters. So we have 3 HEI-led clusters, and they're absolutely instrumental in delivering that training program, which takes place in April and May, but also have an additional role in supporting us in making the decisions about who are going to be the scholars on the program, and also kind of facilitating the conversations in terms of how you actually reach out and find yourself a mentor. So there's the 3 clusters. They're more or less geographically based and thematically structured. And I'm just going to ask each of our cluster leads to unmute and speak a little bit just to their cluster. Although I'm going to be speaking about the Edinburgh cluster. But I'm going to ask Ben, first of all, from the University of the Highlands and Islands. Ben, if you want to unmute and tell us a bit more about Cluster 1, Place, Time and Action.
Sure, yeah, I would love to. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
So my name's Ben Elliott, and I'm an archaeologist. I'm based at UHI, so that's the University of the Highlands and Islands, and I'm the lead for Cluster 1, which is geographically clustered, but as Claire said, also kind of thematically clustered around the ideas of place, time, and action. So in terms of Cluster 1, if you imagine your map of Scotland, where we are kind of situated geographically, we're universities and higher education institutes that are kind of dotted along that kind of east coast. So if you think of universities like St Andrews, Abertay, Dundee, Aberdeen, Robert Gordon, and then blossoming up into the Highlands and Islands with UHI, which is where we kind of snake up the east coast and then kind of cover the top and the islands of Scotland in terms of our kind of geographical coverage. And in terms of our theme, we're really all of the institutions that are part of this cluster have a kind of focus on working with the landscapes kind of local to us and these really kind of spectacular Scottish landscapes to think about issues concerning the environmental humanities. So in terms of disciplines, we work with a really eclectic group of disciplines, everything from kind of political economy through to literature, through to linguistics, right the way through to architecture, art, design, really, really broad ranging, but really kind of trying to interrogate those kind of those key ideas of place. So we're really interested in things like place-based research, deep time perspectives, which can help us think about kind of not only environmental change past, but also environmental change futures, and social action as well. So the kinds of actions that might come from deep time perspectives and a kind of an understanding of the longue durée of place and landscape. So yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that we do that we're interested in. Just in terms of my notes here, one of the things we kind of want to stress as a cluster is that, you know, we've got a fantastic array of different researchers, potential mentors, people that you might be able to work with to develop a project and a proposal. But we also have lots of kind of existing research projects, some of which are interdisciplinary, some of which join together various institutions within our cluster already. So if you see a project that you really like the look of that's tackling some of these themes already, we'd really encourage you to get in touch with the project leads within our clusters, because we really like the idea of kind of developing our own research in partnership with scholars that are coming to us through the scholarship. So it's something that we're really excited about. Don't just think that kind of the project can only be kind of something that you've come up with yourself. It can also be something that's developed in collaboration and dovetails with the projects that we've got going really, because we're really excited to welcome scholars from the Earth Scholarship to the cluster into our institutes, and it's a fantastic opportunity for us really to enrich what we do. So yes, so we're very keen to work with people and have a conversation about the kinds of research that they might want to be involved in, might want to put forward for the scholarship scheme. Is that all right, Claire?
That was brilliant. Thanks so much, Ben. I loved your evocative description of the geography of Scotland as well. Hopefully tempting for people to come and visit and explore all of its areas. But yeah, I think that point that you made at the end was really, really good, actually, that kind of doing some research on universities' websites and having a think if there are those projects that you might join. That's very much a kind of valid research proposal approach. So please do take that on board. So I'm going to speak next to Cluster 2, 3Ms, making, method and multi-species, which is based around Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland, of course, and co-led by Emily Alder from Edinburgh Napier University and Mark Healy from the University of Edinburgh. So I'm going to say a little bit about the cluster. Obviously not going to get quite the insight because I'm speaking on their behalf and they apologise for not being here, but they look forward to working with you through your applications and beyond. But just to give you a bit of a flavour of what Cluster 2 is about. So it's really focusing on those three M words in the title. So making captures their long tradition of creative practice from art, film, writing, performance, curating, gaming and beyond. Method foregrounds methodological diversity within the arts and humanities and also looks to learn from wider approaches in the social and environmental sciences, as well as considering issues of fieldwork, globalism and localism, communication, data, regeneration and exchange across the academic and public political boundaries. And then multi-species questions boundaries of animal, plant, fungal life, tackles issues of equality and justice, multisensorialism, extractivism, posthumanism, deep time archaeology, and heritage beyond the human alone. The cluster has a set of kind of very broad networks, both academic and with organisations outside of higher education, and they're particularly interested as well as you looking at their cluster pages and thinking who some of those partners might be outside of academia, and you could develop research proposals around. And their research areas include aspects of creative practice, eco-critical methodologies, and multi-species approaches. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of 3 M's. But I'm now going to turn over to our final cluster, Triple E, and Charles Pigott from the University of Strathclyde is going to talk you through that. Charles, do you want to unmute? And
great, thank you very much, Claire. Well, hello everyone, and it's lovely to meet you all. So my name is Charles Pigott, and I'm a lecturer in Hispanic Studies at the University of Strathclyde in the Department of Humanities. And I lead the Triple E cluster along with Professor Mark Banks, who is a professor of cultural economy at the University of Glasgow in the Centre for Cultural Policy Research. So in terms of what Triple E actually means, well, at first, when you heard it, you might have thought that it refers to a strenuous Olympic sport, but I can assure you that no long jumps are required, except perhaps the mental gymnastics of transcending traditional academic boundaries and a general stretching of the mind. So Triple E refers to the triad of economy, ethics, and environment. And we understand these terms very, very broadly. We don't intend them to be too prescriptive or deterministic, but really just to stimulate your own thinking, your own ideas. And we're very keen for people to come up with their own interpretations of what these concepts may mean. So in terms of economy, we have a particular focus on the creative industries, which include, among many other things, arts, literature, music, drama, and the engagement that these creative industries have with questions of sustainability, with other species, and the wider ecological environment. But of course, economy isn't just about money. It's about all forms of exchange, and maybe even an exchange with the non-human world. So we understand this idea very, very broadly. So now coming on to ethics, the second term. Well, hopefully all of us on the call today agree that environmentalism and sustainability are good things. But below the surface, there's a whole ocean of ethical issues that we need to navigate. So how do we balance human well-being with conservation? So a key example would be the idea of climate justice. How do we balance different ethical demands, particularly in relation to politics and policies? And what does the idea of environmental ethics even mean across different languages and cultures? So these are just some of the many questions that you could potentially explore. And then coming on to the third term, environment, well, that's really what the Earth Scholars Programme is all about. And it can also be understood in many, many different ways. So how is the environment different from nature? What do we mean when we speak of an environment? And can the concept of environment be translated across different cultural and linguistic boundaries? And also, how should politics, policies, and legal systems engage with all of these issues? So hopefully that's a little bit of food for thought. Now on to who we are as a cluster. Well, the Triple E cluster comprises 5 universities in total. Most of us are based in the southwest of Scotland. So in Glasgow, we are the University of Strathclyde, the University of Glasgow, and Glasgow Caledonian University. And we also have the University of Stirling and the University of the West of Scotland. And there's a whole range of external organisations that we all have links with, and you can find out more about these opportunities on the Earth Scholars website. So I would second the invitation to peruse the websites of all of our universities to find out who you might approach as a potential mentor. And of course, both Mark and myself will be delighted to put you in contact with people if you send us an email with an initial idea. So best of luck with your applications, and we look forward very much to welcoming the successful applicants to Scotland. Thank you.
thanks so much, Charles. That's great, and good to bring in a little bit of the Olympics, even if to reject it instantly. Thank you. That's fantastic. we've been mentioning a couple of web links as we've gone along, and our website for the programme has, if you're watching this live, just launched today. So you might not yet have had a chance to look at the full web pages. Perhaps I could ask one of my colleagues to drop in the link to the web page so people have it to hand, and maybe even the individual cluster URLs as well, which Charles just referred to as well, so you can see a bit more of the detail there. So yeah, so watch out for those. So I'm drawing to the end of what I'm about to say, what I'm saying, but I wanted to talk through the application process in brief, and then some key dates as well before handing over to Sydney in just a second. So first of all, the application process. And I will say, and I'll talk about this on my next slide in terms of the key dates, we do have another couple open sessions. So I'm not going to talk through the application process in a great detail right now. I'd really strongly encourage you to go away, read all the website and the full guidelines, and then come back to the subsequent sessions that we will run on the application process. But just to give you a bit of a heads up about what the process actually looks like, and maybe I'll start from the bottom upwards. So the deadline that you're looking towards is Friday, the 1st of November. So a bit of time to get things organized, to think through who you're going to work with, get the various different documents that you have together. The application process works via SAGSA's online application system, which is run by SurveyMonkey Apply. Really pretty easy to use. The link is already open if you want to go around and look at what's kind of required, although the guidelines always also tell you all of the documentation that's needed and what each of the sections that you're going to have to fill in will be. So amongst the application documents that we'll be looking for is, I suppose, the central part of it, the research project proposal, what it is that you're actually wanting to do if you're coming here to Scotland. We're then looking for you to provide a budget and justification of resources. As I mentioned a while ago, you can come for up to 3 months. So we want a kind of bit of an understanding of how long and therefore how much that will cost, and some explanations of where you've derived the costs from, etc. There's lots of guidelines about budgeting in our documentation. We ask you for a CV, and then we ask you to upload 2 documents. And I'll accentuate this in every single session that we do. It's your responsibility to upload these documents. They're not sent in by someone else. You need to get them onto our system. So we just receive 1 set of documents. So those include a letter of support from your PhD supervisor, and that would be the same if you're postdoc. If for some reason that person's not available, there are some details of who we would accept instead. But to make it easy, we tend to say a letter from your PhD supervisor. And also a letter of support from your proposed host institution with the details of a named lead mentor. That's particularly important to work through and to think about, obviously, who you're going to be working with. And so they know that you will need this letter in advance of the 1st of November. Again, this is something I'll talk through in much more detail in the subsequent sessions that we have about the application process. So that's just a kind of brisk overview of that. But then finally, to turn to the key dates before I hand over to Sydney. You're here at the very top of those. I'll launch and call for applications on the 15th of August. We then have 2 subsequent information sessions, introduction to the programme and completing your application, which are on the 29th of August and the 25th of September. Those are already available for registration on our website. Perhaps colleagues again could just put the links into those 2 events in particular in the chat for those of you who are listening live. They're all available on our website and the web pages for this particular scheme. We're also going to run this year a session for host HEIs and mentors. So this isn't for applicants. It's for academic colleagues in the 17 Scottish HEIs who are perhaps considering hosting an Earth Scholar. So we will run that session as well. But as I said, that's not really applicant focused. Application deadline, 1st of November. We will get results to everybody in a month's time, just over a month's time, so by the 2nd of December, and ask you to accept if you're being offered an award by the 9th of December. So then you can start to get in place all of the things that you need to do after in 2025, the online induction and scholarship sessions, the research placements themselves, the in-person cohort development program, which is going to run specifically from the 23rd of April to the 2nd of May. And then various other aspects that we'll ask you to be involved with, our summer school and the Global Connects 2025 program. So that's a kind of rundown of all of the key dates and sessions, but I'd strongly recommend that you come to those subsequent sessions. We'll record them again if those times are not possible for you or you're otherwise engaged in some way or another. It's always tricky with people across multiple time zones to get times that will work. But all the sessions are recorded. So that's it from me for the moment. Obviously, those of you who are live online, we can answer questions, any immediate questions in the Q&A in a little while. But I'm now going to hand over to Sydney Muhangi from Rhodes University in South Africa, who came to the University of Strathclyde recently. Sydney, over to you, and just let me know when you want me to forward your slides. I will do that.
Thank you very much, Claire, and the other colleagues who have presented. I think they've covered most of the things that you need to know, but I wanted to talk to you based on my experience. If you can go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, they have mentioned most of what you need to know through the application, but from my experience, there are certain things I would like to share with you that you should be aware of. And the first one is, you may not think that you're a good fit, but just don't think, just go for it. That's what I can encourage you to do. Go for it, start the application, and think about the clusters. You may not find your fit. For instance, from my experience, when I looked at the 3 clusters, I struggled to choose where should I fit? Where does my project fit in any of these 3? But then I also found that it fit in more than one of the clusters, but I tried to align it to where I felt I needed to focus more. So think about the clusters, choose where you want your project to fit, and go with that. But also in writing your proposal, you can indicate how your project fits in more than one. And that, I think, to me, it increases your chances because it shows that you want to work past your cluster, which I think that you also need to be aware of. And I would also encourage to reach out to your potential mentors at the host institutions early enough. Don't wait for the last minutes to email someone and you want support in that short time. I was lucky. I reached out early enough, although I felt I could have done earlier because I knew about this program like a month to the deadline. And thanks to Charles, when I reached out to Charles and Mark, they quickly connected me to a mentor, Dr. Maria at the University of Strathclyde, and she was very helpful because I had to send through my idea of the proposal I want to do, and she looked through, asked some questions, how to clarify, and that's how we got through the application that we thought we could all understand, and we wanted to work together on that. And also, on the part of the budget, they told you that you need to make a budget of, depending on the time you want to spend in Scotland. But you also need to know that you have to make some research. You may put figures in a budget that are not either realistic, or they may be inflated, or they may be underestimated. So you have to make some research about the costs, say, of accommodation, the cost of transport, and you also have to sort of think about how many trips you want to make. So I would encourage you to think carefully about that. So for me, the application process, it wasn't daunting, but I approached it carefully because I knew that I did not have a previous experience of Scotland, so I had to make proper research to do that application. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so the second part of the program, which they talked about, was the cohort building. And I wanted to first tell you about the process before I excite you with what happens in the cohort building. This is a very exciting part of the program where you have a chance to meet your colleagues, other scholars from the rest of the world, but also the home-based scholars from several institutions. So we had a chance to sit together, have coffee, talk about our experiences, talk about our past, talk about our research. And that's how you get to understand the people that you can work with, the people that maybe have similar interests, similar research, and also those that you can work with even beyond the program. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so still, in the cohort program, you have a chance. It's not just about meeting people, but you also get a chance to explore Scotland. So we went to various higher learning institutions from Dundee to Edinburgh. We went to Stirling, then we went to Glencoe. So in those areas, it's fun. It's fun. Beyond the academic part, it's fun. You get to see the different things that you've never seen. You get to learn about new cultures. You get to see the beautiful landscapes, but also you learn from the experts. We would go to these institutions, get lectures from the experts, and it's intellectually stimulating. In this program, you get a chance to hear from people. They tell you about their stories. You get to make these long-lasting and authentic relationships with people. And for us, in this cohort, I had a chance to get to meet people who are doing different things, but I've always cared about. And it has come to a point that I'm now in touch with these scholars. We are now trying to write together. We are also exploring how we can build bigger projects once they're finished with their PhD. So it tells you, you need time to connect with someone. And this cohort building program is the exact thing it does. It helps you to connect with people, not just on email or on WhatsApp, but you get to meet people and build authentic relationships, some of which we become professional. If you go to the next, please. Yes, I wanted to talk briefly about my personal project. So my background is interdisciplinary. I come from business to agriculture and food security and environment. So what I'd come to do, I'll try to explore art-based approaches and how this can be used in different contexts to talk about climate change, raise awareness, and teach different communities. So working with Charles, who is here, fortunately, and Maria, Dr. Maria Sledme at the University of Strathclyde, I had a chance to explore different methods. Firstly, I was learning about how to do podcasting. I had never done this before. I've always wished I could do it, but then I found that they had the resources to teach me about podcasting, and this is one of the skills I mastered while at the Uni of Strathclyde. And given that I was in Glasgow, lots of things were happening. So there were exhibitions, and I could attend exhibitions. Some of them I did not know, but in consultation with my mentor, she would direct me where plays are happening, where exhibitions are, and I could go and learn from these events. Yeah, and I also learned how to do zines. So I did not know how to display or how to package the information and the data that I had to teach in a way that non-academic audiences could understand about climate change. And this is one of the ways that I learned working with the experts at the institution, but also had a chance to work with other experts in other institutions. For instance, I'm working even currently with Dr. Michelle Bastian at the University of she's at the University of Edinburgh, and she's an expert. She's a phonology expert. We had a good relationship. She offered a lecture. She delivered a lecture in Edinburgh, and since then we've connected, and she's still working with me to develop a planting calendar. So it tells you how much this program does to connect with experts, which goes beyond what you can get when you're in just one institution or in your home country. So I would encourage you to go for this program because it has changed the way I think, the way I look at things, which I feel you could also gain from this experience. If you go to the last one. So I wanted to tell you what is now happening post this program. I was fortunate to be part of a British Academy supported program. It's called The Times of a Just Transition. And I'm trying to do research on just transitions on small-scale farmers in South Africa. And after this program, I wrote to the British Academy and told them that this is what I needed to do with the farmers. And I've got support from them to continue with what I was doing at the University of Strathclyde. So I'll be working with young people on a European Union supported project. It's called YOMA project, where we are teaching young people on the learn to earn programs, where they're establishing climate resilient enterprises within their community. So I'm using these arts-based approaches to teach them about climate change and also help them to design projects that are climate resilient and also develop micro-credentials and upload them on this platform, which is called the Digital Marketplace, for others across Africa to learn how to implement these projects. So this is what is going to be happening from now till June next year. So thank you so much. I'm excited for this program. And had it not been for this Art Fellowship, I don't think this project would be taking place. So thank you so much to SGSAH and British Council Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Sydney. Yeah, that's really inspiring and just kind of wonderful from those of us who run the program, be it the cluster leads or the funders or the organizers, just to hear your own trajectory through the program and where it's getting you to. So that's really fantastic, and hopefully really inspiring to people who are thinking of applying on the call. We do have mini profiles on our website of all of this year's scholars and last year's scholars, as well as more details about their projects on SGSAHresearch.com. All of these are kind of referenced on the web pages for the program. So, Sydney's given, sort of brilliant overview of his program, but go and have a look at the others as well, and it'll give you a bit of a sense. You're kind of in a good position actually in the third year of a lot of kind of detail of the past 2 years, where the people who applied in the first year, didn't have a sense of what scholars had done before. So do take advantage of what's available. So as we're getting towards the end, I'm now going to ask Dr. Hannah Boast from the University of Edinburgh to talk a little bit about her experience of being a host mentor. So Hannah, if you're still there, do you want to unmute and say a few words for us?
Yeah. Hi everyone, and thanks Claire for inviting me. So yeah, I'm a lecturer at University of Edinburgh in the Department of Literatures, Languages and Cultures, and the co-convener of the Edinburgh Environmental Humanities Network. And I had a student visiting from the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, in Mumbai, called Nabanita Samanta. So Nabanita is based in anthropology and was doing a project about port development and archipelagos, and the kind of the impacts of the development of ports on environment and society. and was using environmental humanities methods to do this more sort of sociologically inflected project. So Nabanita saw me tweeting about the programme and saying, look, this great scheme exists. If your work resonates with mine, please get in touch. And she sent me an email. And she explained how her project fitted with what I was doing, which was really helpful. And it was clearly a good fit because I'm also interested in water and environment. So I asked her for a draft. She put one together, a draft application, and it went through a couple of rounds of comments from me and then got submitted, and happily she was successful. So she was in Edinburgh for 3 months. So at the start, we had a welcome meeting to try and help her orient herself in the city, and to figure out practicalities and talk about goals and deadlines and what she wanted to achieve, because it's a kind of self-directed project for doing independent research, but with the guidance of a mentor, and people use the mentor relationship in different ways, so that there are lots of different ways of working together. So while she was here, she worked on a literature review for a chapter that most aligned with my research. And that's partly because she was relatively early in the PhD. So I think she was in her first year. So by the end of the 3 months, she had a really good grounding in blue humanities research and infrastructure studies, and we talked a lot about our shared areas of interest. And of course, that was really useful for me because I got to learn a lot about new scholarship in my areas of research. I got to learn about the contexts that Nabanita was working on. So she was writing about the Nicobar Islands and also thinking more generally about economy and society in India, and that was helpful for my own research too. Other things that we did, I think she got a lot out of the cohort building program, and I think that's established like longer term contacts that she'll have as she goes through the PhD. I introduced her to different people at Edinburgh, which was nice for all of us because we got to learn about her research. But you know, it was a good chance for her to get to know people around the university that weren't just me. And she was just a really active and engaged member of the university community. So I think that was great for all of us to have. She would go to talks in different departments and ask questions, and it was just a really positive experience. So I'd love to have another student through the Earth Fellowship. I think it's a great experience for hosts and mentors and for students as well. Yeah, that's probably all I have to say. I'll end there, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Hannah. That was really great, and hopefully it kind of really indicates to scholars how it is an exchange. It's really mutual, and you might think, you know, you're kind of imposing on people's time or hospitality or whatever through this scheme, but it's the exact opposite. I think all of the host mentors would say that they learn and gain things from having mentees on the program. It was really interesting as well because I know there's so many different ways in which the scholars from the past 2 years have got in touch with the host mentors, and we'll talk that process through a bit more in the subsequent sessions. But you know, to know, Hannah, that someone, you know, Nabanita was not connected to you at all. She just found out about the program through you tweeting about it. So it's not necessarily that you have to have a strong or a warm contact existing. So as I said, I'll follow up more on how you might want to kind of approach that process yourselves. But you know, I think my message to follow on, Hannah, from your comments is really to say, please get in touch with people, because I know colleagues are really kind of keen to talk to you if there's a good fit between their and your intended research. So thanks very much, Hannah. So I'm just going to finish up this kind of more formal part just by talking about next steps. So yes, program web pages and guidelines are up and available, as is the portal for putting together your applications as well. Those of you who are online now, if you want to stay behind and ask any questions, we will stay on. But those of you who are listening to this subsequently, we do have an inquiries email, so please do drop us a line there, and keep a good eye on our comms channels and our social media as well. If you go to our webpage, you'll be able to see how you can sign up, for our newsletter, follow us on X, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. So please do that. And yeah, we very much look forward to seeing your applications in the future.